Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the ThePCelitist. My name is Woodsie.
My name is Shepherd.
And Shepherd's going to introduce our subject today.
Yes. We have discussed immersion in actually two different videos. I think the first one was called Immersion, the second one was Immersion Revisited. And really in those, we spoke on a more surface level about elements that, things that we make us immersed in a game. Elements of immersion that we like. We named specifics, we gave some examples, we kind of described things we'd like to see in an ideally immersive game. And while those things are certainly important to discuss, we're going to tackle it one more time because we've been refining it over the years. And right. I think Woodsie has really crystallized. We want to get at the heart of immersion because we feel that it's a term that there isn't a universally agreed upon definition of. And I don't know how well we can really discuss it. And what really the heart of it is until we have a concrete definition. And this doesn't mean that it can't ever mean more than this, but I think it helps as a good starting point. So I'm going to turn over to Woodsie, who has yet another brilliant theory.
Okay, so this kind of started with one of our listeners, Star Trek Mike, who emailed us about the grinding video. And we were talking about gameplay aspects that we like, don't like. His opinion was anytime he felt like he was on a grind, that he didn't like the game anymore, and that was it. And
Perfectly valid, by the way.
Yes, exactly. And he said, I don't feel immersed, I don't feel like I'm in the game anymore. And we had a discussion back and forth of why that was. And funny thing, he kept thinking I was disagreeing with him, but I'm like, I agree with everything you're saying. And he gave an example of where he was playing World of Tanks, and that you had to buy your new tanks from the German army. Like, you had to build up money, so I had to grind money, he was telling me the story, and then buy tanks. That didn't happen in the war. No one bought tanks off the German army. They just gave you tanks. And once I learned that, I was no longer interested in the game, because I was no longer immersed. This is Star Trek Mike talking. I'm, paraphrasing. So, I began talking about immersion to him, and I helped define it in my own mind. And what I hope to accomplish right now is bring a rule that will help us all define what immersiveness is, so that you could, A, try to build a game from scratch, just total immersion, okay?
Immersively.
Yeah. Based on immersion. Or take a game and you could point by point out where it's not immersive and where it is. Because it is very subjective, I think, for most people. I was immersed in this game, you weren't immersed. But I think there is a rule that can be followed that will help define it. And
I think currently, just before you get into it, and as we touched on briefly, immersion means different things to different people. For some people, it's purely graphical. This game doesn't look real enough. For some people, it's realism. Like, right. I feel like this gun doesn't behave the way it does in real life. That's not immersive. So there are many different manifestations of realism for a lot of people. I mean, for some people, it's just audio. Like that, right. This game doesn't sound the way so we freely admit that those things can take you out of a game and therefore make it not immersive. But again, we're not arguing that those things are or are not immersive. We're trying to get at the absolute root cause of why is it not immersive.
Right. Now, I'll say a rule of any media. If you're watching a movie, show, game, if you're an expert in anything and they deal with your thing of expertise, you will not accept whatever they say. That is just a rule. Some guy can watch House all day and love that show and think it's awesome. Anyone who knows anything about medicine will tell you it's bupkis.
It's like anyone who watches CSI who actually knows anything about criminal investigation.
Right.
Would say, no, that's bullshit.
Exactly. So that person can't get immersed, all right?
Yeah.
Or anytime they depict hacking in a movie.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Yeah, Swordfish. Any hackers who watch Swordfish.
Exactly. Okay, so the rule. I'm going to try out this rule. The rule is, immersive is, everything in the game to be immersive requires a reason for being.
And it doesn't have to be super logical realistic. It can be fantasy.
Right.
But if within the fantasy world, it has
like, I accept this fantasy world, and I'm going to accept the rules of this world that you hand them to me. I'll give some examples.
And you have to be willing to do that, first and foremost.
Yeah, you have to be willing to do that. Like we were just talking about, like if you said you run over to a quest giver and he says go over to the Deadly Hollows and do whatever. Is that a Harry Potter book? I think it is. Anyway,
you should know.
Go over there and do this quest, right? And then you just press M for map, and then you go over there. Now, if he says, here's a map for your quest, and now you press M and you look at your map. Now, the reason you have a map is given to you. It was just handed to you.
Because you're new to this area, and you don't know where the cave is.
Exactly.
Let me tell you.
Right. So the map has a reason for being. A quick example that I just experienced was Path of Exile, which I've been playing the beta of. Two things happened to me. These are small things, but all of these small things add into one larger thing. A small thing, I wanted to group up with my friend, and the way you do that, it's not just a UI button. You walk over to a billboard, a post board, and you look for people to quest with on the post board, and I found my friend through there. It's just an immersive little thing that it's connected to the world. It's not outside the world, it's connected to the world. It has a reason for being. Secondly, I was talking to an NPC, and generally in fast-paced RPGs like Torchlight or Path of Exile or Diablo 3, you have waypoints throughout the place. The NPC was talking casually about the waypoint system, explaining how he had used it once, and it made him sick. Okay? Now that's immersive because you know it's part of the world, and that the people in the world are also aware of this mechanic. So it's not something
it's not there just for you.
It's not there just for you.
And the characters themselves are not there just for you.
Right. We were talking about how, things we would like to be immersive, the feeling of not being the only special guy in the world. And that's layers of what I'm talking about, which characters have reason for being besides you. This whole town isn't here because of you. There's a reason for being. If you walk through the forest in Morrowind, and there's just a little town, it might seem odd. If they're next to a mine shaft, and they're a mining town, suddenly it makes more sense that there would be a town there, wouldn't there? Mm-hmm. It's an immersive element to add.
And like Fallout 3, depending on how you choose to deal with the town of Adam, that town could be there because of you, or it could not be there because of you.
You don't know its reason for being, but you know its reason for ending.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, you want to walk into a city and have it be kind of like Stormwind, even though that's an MMO, so it takes on a different beast entirely. But that city, it's a self-sustaining, fully functional city that you happen to walk into.
Right. It feels that way. There's a commerce side.
Granted, you're a night elf whore, but...
But, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that this rule is required. Every game needs to be immersive. I point out StarCraft is not an immersive game experience. It's a fun experience, and I love StarCraft. It's not immersive, and it doesn't need to be. But if I want to have something that I could point to, and someone says, how come this game isn't immersive? I could go down the list and go, this doesn't have a reason for being, this doesn't have a reason for being, this doesn't have a reason for being, and these things are just non-immersive elements of your game. Mm-hmm. And I think this rule does pretty well. Obviously, like we were talking about before, there's specialties that people just an M16 doesn't shoot that way. I'm just sorry, it just doesn't.
Yeah,
that's
you're a stickler for those details, then I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that's the rule I came up with. I'm curious if anyone else has other rules. Do you have anything to add to the rules?
I do. I just think that as a good way to test any rule is to just come up with an example, see if it holds up, and it's not as if you come up with 8 examples and they all hold up, that validates the rule, but just come up with examples and see how well it holds up. That's really the best we can do. And so as he was mentioning in terms of layers, think of practical applications, and he gave a few examples of games that did that. Be like the bulletin board where you find people for a game, or the characters are aware of the waypoint system. Like for me, I've mentioned before, and this is something I'd like to see in a game, but let's say, for example, in a Red Dead Redemption type of world or a Skyrim type of world, a game in which it's pretty apparent that they don't have some kind of mass communication system. Mm-hmm. It's not like in Firefly where you can fly between worlds and they've already heard about you because there's a way to communicate instantly.
Right.
For example, Red Dead Redemption, it's clear that the only way information travels is by word of mouth.
Right.
If I go into a town, commit some crime, and as they're chasing me, I immediately ride from that town to another town, full speed. I get to that next town and they say, oh, you're the one who did that thing in that town. That to me isn't immersive. Not it's kind of in a realism sense because how did word travel this far?
No,
it follows the rule. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
I was the first person to witness the crime and then get to a new place. They've already heard of me.
Right.
There's not a reason for that happening. If there was and it was explained to me,
if like a train shot by you,
like,
I'm gonna tell them what happened.
This town actually has an unmanned drone, and they saw you do it, then I'll buy it. But like that's a manifestation of if they could somehow explain to me why people in other towns where I've never been, I think that would be an awesome element. In Skyrim, for example, you're part of the Thieves Guild in whatever the town is. I can't remember. I haven't played in months. If I go from that town to, and again, it's, do I fast travel to the other town? Like, realism and everything aside. I go to another town, someone recognizes me. Hey, I saw you rolling with people in a Thieves Guild. Word then spreads about me, and part of the game goes from, it just, not just is immersion a factor, but in terms of opening up gameplay. Right. Not to get on a tangent, but now I not only have to worry about the game I'm playing, my reputation in each town is, and I've mentioned this in videos past, but like if you can explain to me why, and we mentioned before, UI is a big factor for immersion for us, especially if it's like, I don't need an indicator that tells me if I'm prone, crouched, or standing.
Right.
Stuff like that. I don't need, in some of the Splinter Cell games, a meter that tells me how visible I am. I like to just know if I'm in a third-person stealth action game, I can't see myself.
Right.
That's probably a good thing.
Right.
I think that if you're playing a futuristic game, for example, and you have a space helmet with a HUD on it, at least give it curvature so it looks like I'm in a helmet. Don't give me this two-dimensional flat display of everything that's going on. Give my HUD a reason for being.
Right.
So I think those are just a couple of examples, and we obviously would love counter examples if you have them, examples where you think that this rule stands up. We're not saying this is the golden rule. But to us, it makes sense. As to the root of immersion, elements and characters within a game have a reason for being.
Right.
And that makes them immersive. Or at least the degrees to which they are explained well.
Right.
And have a reason for being. It gives them the degree of immersion.
Right. And, I mean, if your game that you particularly like is not meant to be immersive, then it's not meant to be immersive. I mean, like we brought up examples before. But yeah, I think it's kind of the root of it. Does this have a reason for being besides you, the player? Mm-hmm. So, like Shepherd said, if you have any counter examples, or you could think of something that's extraordinarily immersive that has no reason for being, please let us know.
Zombies are permissible. And I ask you this, we won't talk about it in this video, but can a non-first-person game be immersive?
I think it reduces immersiveness. It can be. But I think the fact that my camera just floats out behind me, it doesn't have a reason for being, and that bothers me. And it's not that it can't be, it's just, again, it's one of those things, it's layers of a cake.
I was hoping you were going to say that, because third person, you're viewing it from outside the player. Is there a reason for you to be viewing it that way? Yet another example.
Exactly.
We turn it over to you, faithful subjects.
My name is Woodsie.
My name is Shepherd. This is the ThePCelitist signing out.